Hello, I'm Jacob Vasquez.
And I'm Laura Russman, and we are going to be talking about Slack.
Yay. So, Slack is a collaborative workspace that's on the interwebs. Um, what its primary function is it gives an opportunity to organizations to have a more dynamic and versatile experience when working as an organization. So, for instance, if you are somebody who is working, let's say, distribution for a company, you could easily have subgroups branch out different threads where specific people can be part of each of those threads. So if you have somebody who's working the shipping and receiving end of it, you can have all your shipping and receiving guys as one group. If you have somebody who's a lead that you have to have contact with, you can just have a lead specific uh, thread with that person. The other great things about this is it allows you to share information about the company or about the organization overall with everybody in that group. So, and for instance, with my organization, we have a group that allows us to see any kind of news update that's uh, dispersed from the organization. I work for the city of Grand Rapids, so anytime they decide to use Twitter, we get a Twitter update. So if there's anything going on that we might need to know that we aren't privy to via email, we'll get that in Slack. Anything transportation related, we get those specific uh, information sent through that thread. All that's designed for us to be able to have access to information instantly, where normally you would have to rely on somebody above you to provide you that information. And as we all know, emails are not always the best form of communication in an organization. Um, Specifically, when you start thinking about what people infer during an email session. Slack allows you to have a little bit more of a conversation than you would have in just a normal email exchange. It's very similar to other products like Skype, but the upside is that your communication can be tailored to how you speak with that person. If you have a more casual relationship, you can just emoji the heck out of one another. You can easily drop a GIF in there if you really want to express your feelings about a given decision that was made by your organization. Um, or if you want to have a more professional, resource, you can put restrictions in there for that purpose too. So you don't have to allow your organization to use emojis or GIFs, but really, it doesn't hurt. That's how people speak these days. But that's what Slack is. It's just a dynamic platform for trying to organize and disperse information in your company. So.
Yeah, and I really like what you said about the emails, because that's an issue we deal with at my work where it's constant emails, and then somebody replies to that email to everybody, and then there's another reply, and then something changes on it, and it's like, how do we keep up with this? Where it seems like with something like this, you could communicate, get those decisions made, and make sure that it's done and finalized, then send out a mass email to everybody if you needed, so that you don't have those reply emails all the time. So I think this is a really cool platform.
Yeah, and it's a running history. So depending on what you pay for, you can have the entire history just on that one thread. So you can go for, let's say you had a conversation a month ago, and you need to refer to that as opposed to trying to dig through emails where you have to go through every, IT alert, everybody's, the email information at the top of the email, everybody's specific signatures, which everybody just is a cute little butterfly about their signatures. You could just scroll right to that date, and that's what we talked about. And you don't have to try to muddy through the email chain from Hades like you typically would. So it is the very definition of a collaborative work site. So now, when it comes to the Slack's artificial intelligence, yeah, it figures out what you like real quick. In terms of how we notice that in our workspace is it actually will suggest groups. So ever so often, it'll just say to you, like, well, what about this thread? and then you can just click on it and just start a whole new thread. So it is a very intuitive platform overall.
That's really cool, I think, because, like I said, there's things that you don't even think about that would interest you until you randomly find them. It's like that old website, Stumble Upon. I used to look at that all the time. Click, and there's new
Wow,
things
yeah,
that are
Stumble
super
Upon.
cool. And, that kind of figured you out as well and what you liked. So it's kind of cool that in a work environment, this platform is also looking into that so that it's a little bit more of a professional interest that it's throwing out to you.
Yeah, and it's really about what you put into it too. The more you use it, the more you'll get out of it. When we started off, it was very much just like, hey, let's just send each other emojis about how frustrated we are about the boss. But then it kind of grows to the point where, you start seeing, like, you go to select a new thread. Well, you'll see like different threads that you were a part of, and you're like, oh, that was a group I need to get back into. Like we have our operations staff. You might want to bump into there because what you're working on in your particular section now requires you being in contact with the operations guys. And because you change over people so often, unfortunately, in organizations, with these threads, it allows you just to be able to drill down right to that group and be a part of that discussion without having to worry if your overall IT department has just gotten rid of your email because they don't think you're working for the organization anymore, or anything silly that could possibly happen. So really, yeah, it helps you learn it and helps you guide you into how you can use it. They tell you too, it's like, use this for to-do lists. Like, they get really adamant in the system. It's like, we can do that for you. We'll just build lists here, and then they just give you suggestions on what to do. And when you start doing it, you're like, oh yeah, I can use that for that. And whenever they get something new, like, don't forget about this. Come on, we're here. And it's just like, even though it sounds annoying when I say it that way, it isn't really that. It's just they constantly are telling you what it can do for you. So
yeah,
the robot's listening.
They always are.
They always are. So
you had some really good thoughts on this. You had a lot of
yeah. I'm pretty fortunate overall because this is something that we're using very extensively, and we're going to be expanding it in my organization. Now, when we got it, it was disruptive. We were having fun. We started off with a kids and pets section so people could post pictures of their kids or pets. We did a throwback Thursday because we're lame, and people would put up pictures of their crazy, high school pics, and, we were not maximizing it the way we needed to. Now, as we've grown accustomed to it, yeah, we still shoot emojis and post GIFs or GIFs. I don't know how to say it. So whatever you guys feel is best, I say GIFs. Okay. So
GIF. He said it's just like peanut butter. So
yeah, it's like, it's confusing. Is it peanut butter or is it an app? Leave me alone. I don't know what's going on. Right. So with disruptive technology, yeah, it starts off that way because we didn't have any guidance. We were just like, here's Slack, go crazy. And yeah, we screwed around. But then all of a sudden we started using it. And what happened is that we found that information that we weren't getting in our work group, we just started getting. And people knew how to get to us easier without trying to track down our individual emails. They said, here's the front office group. Here you go, guys. Here's information about a road closure that you would normally not get without having something like this in place. It's kind of frustrating to kind of think about where we were when we first got Slack to where we are now, because we probably could be a lot more advanced where we are, but we'll get there. But it's one of those things where all of a sudden we went from zero to no communication to sometimes too much communication, because now we have to kind of like start putting filters or parameters in there to kind of say, like, what do we really need to know here? So, people in the maintenance side of our department know that only things that are really maintenance related should go in the maintenance folder. You shouldn't put things that aren't maintenance related into that folder because you want to keep everything streamlined. And that's where we're at now, is we're starting to see that the better performance in work groups because we're starting to focus on that more.
Do you
So
feel like it's disruptive in like, do you feel like it's going away from email? Because we use a different
yeah,
platform, Spark, which is similar but not quite as advanced. But we still heavily use email. Do you feel like it's kind of, because when I was first reading about Spark or about Slack, it seemed to me like it was a sustaining technology. But the
hmm
more I hear you talk about it, it almost seems like it's disruptive in getting rid of email
I
from
think
your.
I think it's a bridge.
Okay.
I think I think with some organizations, emails are still important because, for the most part, a lot of organizations consider that as still like a baseline source of legitimate contact. Like it's, if you send out an email, it's got your header, anything else like that, it's still official. This doesn't have quite that same air to it. So if we're sending out a policy that's going to be applied throughout a department, you're still going to want to send the email versus anything else.
Okay.
But that being said, I think the vision is that we will get rid of things like Skype for instant messages. That's going to go away, and the focus is that's going to be handled through Slack. Most of the communication that's not official will be done via this. So it is very disruptive in that. It's going to change a lot in our department. But the overall, though, is that it's also going to allow us to, and this is where I think sustaining kind of plays into it, is it's going to allow organizations to do what they do well better because they'll be able to communicate better.
Okay.
So like if we have a customer service issue, we can address that right away, as opposed to waiting for an email response back because your boss hit it into their to-do file and what have you. It's right there in front of you. It pops right up every time you do something. So it's, I think, best of both worlds.
Okay.
You
Nice.
know, so yeah.
Well, we know security is always a concern with anything related to the online world. It seems like hackers get smarter every single day. And it is a little, concerning when you have a lot of company data through the internet. And with hackers out there, that they may be able to get to something you don't necessarily want them to know about. So my thought would be, until they know, I don't know how old Slack is, how long it's really been a thing, how good they've gotten the security on it.
Yeah.
But I would think, just like anything else, you wouldn't want to discuss very confidential things through that, like HR. You're not going to send a quick message to your HR person about your employee who you're writing up for something.
Yeah.
So I think that's just kind of normal with security settings, that, that's always going to be a concern when anything's going through the internet.
And I think that it's really incumbent upon the organization to figure out how they need to use something like this, because there is a level of where you don't want to send that via an instant message. It needs to be an email, maybe even needs to be a scanned doc, but you can actually do that through Slack. And I think that we're with our particular work group, we've found is that we've had more issues with Skype as a city and Microsoft products than we've had with third-party systems like this. These are designed to withstand those a lot better than older systems that they're trying to shoehorn those protections into. As anybody know that if you've done a Microsoft update like once a week, you've got 13 security updates that pop up there. With here is they're, from what I've been told by my IT department, they're trying to model how Apple does their security. So you don't have to worry about it. It's going to get taken care of. You don't need to.
Apple's offering $1 million to somebody who can hack into their system.
Yeah, exactly. And not everything's going to be 100% secure. And depending on what kind of organization you are, we're a public organization, so everything we do is foiable. Right. So even if we want to have security and we don't want to share certain information. If somebody decides they want to FOIA something we've written, they can get their hands on it. It can get redacted, but so they don't see all of our GIFs and all of our emojis. But, meat and potatoes, anybody can see that. And if you're a private organization, you don't have to worry about that as much.
Yeah.
And ethically, I don't know, you work at a bank, so I'm pretty sure ethical and legal are pretty huge for you too. So
yeah, I mean, ethical, it's hard to say with a platform like this. I wouldn't think there were a whole lot of ethical issues overall that were huge. I think it would be more small, as in like, screwing around in conversations, kind of like you were saying with all the GIFs and the emojis and things like that. It's can be a time waster.
mm-hmm.
Even with our system that we use, they try to tell us all the time, don't have non work related conversations. However, when I have a group with my whole branch and somebody sends something, hey, we have this member here and they have a typo that's funny, they're going to be sending back like, oh, is that really who's here? Or so, and so it kind of turns into those other conversations, which is where I think it's, to me, it's not really an ethical issue as long as it's not constant, just like chatting about random things.
Yeah.
Because I believe in team building and, building those relationships up. So I think that those little things have a part in that. So as long as it's not wasting incredible amounts of time, I don't really see a huge issue with it ethically.
Yeah, and I think with us too is we being mindful is something that you need to instill as an organization, regardless of the tool you use to manage communication. So there's a little bit of sometimes you gotta get through the workday. So sometimes a funny name is a funny name, but ultimately you can't put yourself in a position as an organization to have people just completely blasting one another on any platform. And I think that's where it's really, it's just a tool. And whatever you bring to the tool is where you're going to get out of the tool. So, hold on. So, I don't know if you look online, Slack, especially, they have a really huge YouTube channel. Like we could have probably just not even done a presentation and just put all their Slack stuff out there. And while some of it will be considered propaganda, they really go in depth about how you use Slack in your particular operation. And they cover everything in these different presentations from business to business, business to your customer, how customers can relate to each other, and also replying back to that business. I guess one way to look at it is it allows you to have more personal contact with people inside and outside of your organization, because you can literally with Slack include anybody in a thread as long as you got an email address.
Yeah.
So they don't.
I created an account just to kind of see what it looked like when we were working on this. I think their main model is the business to business.
Yeah.
That would make the most sense. But yeah, I created an account. It's like, who do you want to invite? What do you want to call this group? Who's your team? You have so many options with it that you can use it for literally anything you want to.
And the thing too is with the Slack app too is that, for people who used to, if you had a complaint, and you submit a complaint to the general email inbox, we know what happens to those emails.
Yeah.
With the Slack channel, it's going to pop out on everybody who's part of that group. So if you get in there, if you're a customer and you're like, hey, here's the customer complaint thread and I'm blah, 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 everybody's going to see it, and it's going to catch their attention. I think that's one thing that Slack, I think, does really well is it grabs people's attention. You don't quite have that with some of the other instant messaging communicative tools that are out there. And I hate to bash on Skype, but, Skype has always been kind of glitchy. And it does good for instant messaging. But if I'm trying to share a spreadsheet with somebody, it's like the last thing I would ever use to share a spreadsheet with somebody in our operation. We actually have a Slack channel for vendors who we work with equipment in some of our facilities. So that's the kind of thing where it's like, hey, here's this problem. We can just message those guys immediately as part of that Slack group, and we don't have to worry about sending an email or calling their dispatcher or anything like that. And they get it right on their phone. So the business to business is where it's firmly planted. But I think that as it grows, you will see, potentially, if you get your Disney Plus, and you have a problem, you might just hit the Disney Plus Slack problem thing and type in your issue, and then all of a sudden be like, I don't know why Apple Dumpling Game isn't on, streaming right now. That's.
Yeah, I already bought a 3-year subscription to that.
So did I. But we're not. But this is a Disney Plus shill here. We're talking about Slack, so we'll keep going. So revenue model. Now, I don't know, Laura, did you get anything too in-depth with the revenue model? Because, everything I saw is really, from what I can see, most of it is subscription. They
kind of present themselves as that freemium, so you can go in,
yep.
You can sign up for free, and you can get pretty basic services. And then depending on how in depth you want to get with it, you can spend more and more money to get, more and more out of it.
Yeah. And I think that's where we're at as an organization. We are going to be spending some loot-ish to really make it more robust for what we need it to be. I haven't seen any ads on there, to be honest with you. Everything that pops up in Slack is about Slack for the most part. So I'm not sure if, we're an enterprise, operation, we're a public entity, so maybe it's a little bit different for us, but, I haven't seen how else they generate money beyond, subscription. So, at this point, that's what I've seen. But, I'm sure if we decide to jump into that Slack YouTube, they'll tell us exactly how they generate sales revenue and everything else. So there's ads somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure.
So this is a fun one. Is it Web 1 or Web 2.0?
So I feel like it's a Web 2.0.
I agree.
Because you go in and you collaborate.
Or should I argue with you? No, it's a Web 1.10, 1.0. It's not 2.0. Laura.
I know. Hey, we're supposed to be discussing.
Don't mind me. Yeah, gee whiz, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, so basically, it's a Web 2.0. It's, you're interacting with other people. You're not just going to a specific website and whatever the website has to offer, that's all you're getting. Because other people are involved in it, and that's what you go with.
Yeah, max outside influences hitting your organization. You more information in your hand than you would have with the previous. Where it's you if you need something, you can just go get it and just bring it in. Which you can't do with some of the other services.
Right.
Now, I don't know. I'll if you don't mind, I can kind of talk about this a little bit. This is what we're doing with Slack. We're very much building this to be worked inside and outside of our organization. Internal, we've kind of discussed that already, but outside the organization is where it's key. We have a lot of different subgroups that interact with my department, whether it's, the Downtown Development Authority, but they're called something else now. There's also, we have marketing team, and they have people that work through them as interns and stuff. All of this is being used to communicate with these groups. So not everybody in your organization needs to be a part of those particular collaborative groups, but it does allow you to have communication with people who, affect your department, even if it's not like a, face-to-face instance. It's if we have something going with our prize, we have our prize subgroup where we can discuss stuff with those people who work for our prize and get those issues hammered out a lot quicker and faster than we ever would between meetings and email. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Slack has really taking that Web 2.0 and just kind of really just really aggressively allowing communication to really just take hold. So
Yeah, for sure.
social media analytics.
So I think Slack is doing a really great job with this.
Mm-hmm.
So pulling from kind of where we are as people in technology, everybody's going to Twitter and doing their 140 characters or less, and you see that too long didn't read, thing on all this stuff
Yeah.
because we're so busy,
Mm-hmm.
because I do think that we're busier than past generations, as an overall, because we're expected to do more to make less money essentially, because
Well,
of
we
buying.
we call
So
that transformation in my group. That's called transformation. So
So to me, it's like, I'm sorry, my job isn't to read full on documents. There are times when I have to,
mhm.
but give me the basics. I deal with the general public. I don't, my compliance department, they can go through the agreements and terms and conditions and make sure everything is legally sound. I just need to know the basics of what I need to help my members coming into my office. So I think that they're doing a good job with this because it is like that kind of Twitter platform for business where it's just, hey, here's the basics of it.
Yep.
And if they do need to send a document in, you can still do that. But I think they're kind of pulling from, all these social media sites that people get bored easily now.
You
Yeah.
got to keep people's attention. I hate to
Yes.
say it. If I'm between the two groups. I'm between old timer and new guy. So, I kind of have to still speak both of those languages. And new guy language is still something I'm trying to get a hold of. I don't always understand the letters that signify words, but I'll ask, and something like Slack allows you to kind of just jump in there as somebody who may not be familiar with everything, because I'm not great on social media, but darn it if I don't have a Twitter account now, because we get Twitter updates and then I can get it on my phone and all this other stuff. And now I don't really communicate on Twitter, but I use it for a way to get information. And I
Yeah.
would not have done that without Slack.
I think bringing it back to AI a little bit too, it was talking about being able to ask the questions into that system. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's, Google it. We hear that all the
Oh, yeah.
time. I'll just Google it to find my answer. And so they also integrated that
Oh, yeah.
into their system for your specific business, which was a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I don't want to be too pro Slack, but it's pretty damn cool if I
Yeah.
can use parlance.
You got any
So,
last minute?
ooh, that was the last one. So
That
we
was the
should
last.
wrap this up, Laura. We should
Taking you a
probably,
little bit of time anyway, but I think you did a great job. You clearly have a little bit more experience with it than me, but
yeah,
I enjoyed kind of learning about it from you too, from like
yeah.
firsthand.
It's really one of those tools where it's if you, much like anything else, it's about what you bring to it as an organization. But I think what you'll find is as time goes on here, a system like Slack will allow you to communicate intergeneration. I hate words like that. Between the generations that are in the workplace today, it's.
Gotcha.
I was trying to make up a word, it didn't work out. So, so really, ultimately, I think it's going to be those things that's going to bridge that gap in an organization, which will allow people to, from the old set with the new set, and everybody's going to be able to get on the same page.
Very cool.
So, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
And